honestly, this could be 3 or 4 shows just going through this conversation. But the first clip we're going to talk to is where Jack Tame was challenging Winston Peters on Winston Peters wanting to have gang prisons. Now, it's very, 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 very important that you listen to the language that Winston Peters does. And this is the Trumpian thing. He says something, like at the start, he doesn't know how many gang members there are in prison. And then later in the same part of this conversation, he claims to have said something else 3 minutes ago. And luckily, Jack calls him out on that. He says something like, let the record show. But what he says he doesn't know, then he tries to say why he doesn't know it. And then he says he does know it, all in the space of one kind of 3 to 4 minute conversation. So remember, Jack Tame, how much will it cost? How many people is it serving? How are you going to do that? That's pretty much what he asks all through this conversation. And I don't think a single question gets answered. So we're not going to do all of them. We're going to do this one, and we're going to do one from the very end.
I want to start with policy this morning. New Zealand First will establish a dedicated gang prison. How many prisoners will that hold?
Well, it'll hold the number that's required to be held because...
So there's the first answer. How many will it hold? The number that's required to be held. I'm just, my interest, how do you make a budget for that? The number that is required to be held. That's the first answer.
What we don't want to do is see the recruiting going on in prisons now.
So he's already moved away from the answer.
Corrections officers tell me it's totally possible. It'll actually work, and so I believe them because of their experience. We're also going to make sure we increase their correctional capacity as well. But we're going to not go on any further with a recruitment process which is destructive to young Maori, particularly first in prison, who are then coming out as ready to be graduated as full gang members.
So how many people will it hold?
Yeah, back to it.
We'll hold the required number that there is now.
And what is the required number?
If you just go and have a look now, this is not complex. Ask yourself how many gang members are in prison now.
I'm asking you, how many gang members are there in prison now?
Well, it depends what you talk about. Are they new
how many gang-affiliated prisoners are there in New Zealand prisons, according to Corrections now?
No one has that record.
Oh, Corrections does. 2,700.
Oh, I thought it'd more than that.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's why I didn't. Well, I would have thought it'd been 3,000 at the very least.
Okay, so real clear here. He said no one has that number. Jack Tame says Corrections do. Jack Tame says 2,700, and then Winston, out of nowhere, pulls out the number 3,000. I would have thought it would have been 3,000. Important to remember that order. Winston said no one has that number. Jack Tame said 2,700. That's from Corrections. Winston then said, well, I would have thought it would have been more like 3,000.
But when I talked to them, they said they weren't certain of it, and that's why I'm not giving you an answer now.
Blaming someone else?
So you're going to build a new prison to hold 3,000 people?
We're going to have people in prison building prisons.
Okay. Prisons are going to be built. Remember that? Prisons are going to be built. From prisoners are going to be building prisons. People in prisons building prisons. That's exactly what he just said.
I saw offshore in Greenville, South Carolina, and I thought, this is
great.
South
Carolina.
Now they've got people getting skills, they're working, and they're actually doing something for society.
You're going to build a prison that will hold 3,000 people?
No, we're going to get people building units, type of security prefab units that I saw internationally.
Building.
And it's a wonderful idea. And
so he's still talking about prisoners building units
to take a job when they get out.
So
prisons
let's think about that.
Prisons about punishment and rehabilitation.
So you think we need to hold 3,000 prisoners? So that would be 3 Mount Eden prisons, 3 Remutaka prisons. How much will it cost to implement this policy?
Good question.
Well, much less than it's costing now.
How much will it?
How much will it cost? Less than it's costing now. So to build new prisons to put gang members into will cost less than it's costing right now. That's the answer.
Cost.
Oh, look, I'm not going to sit here and have a fiscal argument with you when you don't know what you're talking about. The prison officers that I saw, back New Zealand's first proposal, they said it will work. And if it happens, they say we will have far less reoffending.
Mr. Peters, it's entirely reasonable in an election campaign, given this is your policy, to ask how much these new prisons will cost.
Look, if you knew that, you would know that Kelvin Davis...
Do you not know that?
Kelvin Davis has been asked that question, and he doesn't know.
I'm asking you. It's your policy, Mr.
Peters. If the minister in charge of corrections doesn't know, and the system doesn't know, how would you know?
How much does it cost to hold a prisoner a year?
Well, now, that varies between 125,000 to, they say, 195, 200,000.
Right.
Now, that cost That variable is of concern to me because it's far too big a range.
So how much does it cost to hold a prison, to build a prison that would hold 3,000 people?
The fact of the matter is that there are prisons now that can do that as we speak.
Okay, so now he's talking about prisons that are already there. Remember, a minute ago, they were building prisons and they were building prefab buildings, secure prefab buildings. And now he's talking about there are already prisons that can do this.
Just got to make sure we assign them to there.
Assigned to the current buildings.
So you're not actually going to develop a new prison. You're going to reassign some of our current prisons.
Work it out, Jack.
It doesn't sound like there's a lot of detail in this policy.
Jack. There are 2,000 spare beds now in our prisons. So we've got more than 2/3 of the way there already, just as we speak.
That's actually completely, in fact, incorrect as well, because the prisoners that he's talking about are already in prison. So the 2,000 spare beds aren't for a new 3,000 prisoners coming in. They're already for prisoners who are within the system, which are the prisoners he's talking about. But for some reason, he's now going, they're going to build prisons, they're going to build prefabs, we're going to utilize the beds that are already there because we can fit them in there because there's 2,000 spare beds, except we're talking about prisoners that are already in prison, so they don't need those 2,000 spare beds because they're already in the prison. And when Jack says...
Perfectly clear.
But when Jack says there doesn't seem to be too much thought into this, he's completely right.
So now, if you take out from one prison that capacity, you're going to get there. But when Mr. Davis was asked this question, the minister in charge of corrections, not you, he didn't know.
Mr. Peters, this is your policy. I asked you how many prisoners in New Zealand had gang affiliations. You didn't know. I asked you how much it would cost. You didn't know.
I said to you that it was 3,000. You said it's 2,700. I don't believe that.
Actually, the record will show that you said that information doesn't exist.
So there's the point. That's why I wanted us to all be aware of the order. Winston Peters, 2.5 minutes later, is trying to retell history from 2.5 minutes ago, maybe forgetting that those big camera things also record, by saying, I said it was 3,000. No, he said nobody knew. Jack said 2,700, then Peter said 3,000, and he's already trying to rewrite history. Within the history he's making right now, as to the history of this is the worst Q&A interview there's ever been. That's the history.
Check with
no.
It does exist. I've got another question for you regarding another policy.
Stop right here. Stop right here. I'm not going to be talked over here. I've been going to prisons as a young lawyer from a long time, watching and seeing prisoners and seeing Bremerhaven and all
back
over
in
the
the early
country,
1800s.
Internationally. The prison officers, when I spoke to them, they said they don't know exactly, but they thought it was that figure. And that's why I wasn't going to go and use it.
It's surprising.
Sorry, I can smell the bullshit, Mr. Peters. You spoke to a prison officer, a corrections officer, and asked them how many gang members there were. They didn't know, which means you didn't investigate any further. Which means you didn't go to corrections to find out these answers. You asked the guys who were looking after the inmates, and because they didn't know, you thought, well, no one knew, and I'm not going to make it up. I think you probably are making it up, Mr. Peters.
Surprising, given your experience in prisons, that you wouldn't have developed some sort of fiscal detail around a policy of this.
Well, I have, actually.
Okay, well, how much will it cost?
The fact is, there won't be greater cost.
How much will it cost?
Can I just say...
No, you can't.
No, we
you can
won't
tell us how much it will cost. This is your policy. You've complained in this campaign
Look, I'm not here having...
You've complained in this campaign already that people haven't asked you about detail.
We won't have amateur hour based on what you don't know.
By all means, Mr. Peters, inform us.
I'm answering you. Well, if you'll just keep quiet for a second, take a Valium, and realise we're only 2 weeks away from the election. If the corrections officers didn't know with certainty, if the Minister of Corrections didn't know at all, then how can you be so certain of that?
Because corrections
that's my point. There's so much going on in this election campaign where the numbers are being thrown around and they're not true.
That's what we're going to use for now. That's the first part of the interview. That's 5 minutes into a 26-minute interview. You get the idea, Cherry, of what's going on. And every question is like that. It's like I said, we could have been here the whole week doing a Winston special. Like we honestly could be. And that's what it is. And I don't know quite how to say this. It's a bit of a personal story maybe, but my darling father who passed away, a few months ago, he was getting to a stage in his life where things weren't quite as clear as they once were. Now, first of all, I'm not suggesting that Winston Peters has any form of mental decline at all. I'm not making that assumption. But what I see in Winston's is what I was seeing at my dad towards the end, where if anyone showed him something different, there was like, What are you talking about? How dare you? My dad had a little bit of that because he was declining. I'm not saying Winston Peters is, make that clear so no one clips this, but I see that same kind of how dare you question me in Winston. And that's why I say it feels Trumpian, and it's revolting, Chewy. It's utterly revolting.
I'll also red flag him for something we've been talking a lot about in the last couple of weeks, is that it certainly sounds like a simple answer to a complex question.
Yeah, he's got no details behind it.
Like anyone that's going to come up with policy around prisons because of something he saw in South Carolina, like chain gangs. Are we talking about forced labor again? Like, not super keen on that, Mr. Peters, just because you were there when it was invented.
There's another part of the conversation, and we're not showing it because we can't show it all. There's another part of the conversation where they have a one-line, like literally a one-line policy that talks about, you know, providing care for elderly people. And Jack asks him, how many people are you providing this care for? And he won't answer it. And he starts talking about the workers, and he starts talking about them paying the carers more. And Jack's like, no, but for us to know how much it's going to cost you, you need to know how many people are going to be cared for. Not how many carers there are, how many people are going to be cared for. And Jack does the numbers there and then, and he basically says if it was going to be 10% of the retired population, it would be something like $6.8 billion a year, your policy. And New Zealand First hasn't done those numbers. It's fairly obvious. In this conversation, they talk about their fiscal report, and he says to Jack Tane that will be released later on today. We're going to finish tonight's show. I've got one other clip to play for you first, but later on, in about 5 or 6 minutes, with the response to that, because funnily enough, Chewy, the numbers didn't come out that Winston was promising. You'll be surprised. Let me show you this as well. I'm not going to play all of this. You can go to my Twitter feed if you want to have a look, but I made this clip, and it's like 6 minutes long. And it's got
New Zealand had gang affiliations.
All the
have amateurs in.
Will you fund your policy? New Zealand First will fund residential care for the aged. How many people will you fund?
I've just given you the figure of care workers alone, and I can't.
I'm not asking about care workers. I'm asking about the aged people who will receive the care. How many people will receive the care?
Well, if you had any understanding of the situation, it's the people that care for them that are going to be the cost.
No, you can tell us how much this policy will cost.
Could I just finish off?
You can tell us how much the policy will cost.
Can I finish off my answer?
If you please tell us how much the policy will cost. It's a straight question.
Can I just tell TV1, you're a taxpayer-owned operation.
Here comes the Trumpian. Maybe we will play. There's only 3 minutes.
Interview here.
Trumpian side of it.
You thinking you're going to do what you did last time? Would you do that? Tell me you're going to do that before I answer.
Mr. Peters, it is a straight question.
Are you going to keep quiet while I answer the question?
Okay, according to Eldony, the average cost per person is $1,400 a year.
We're not moving on.
So there are currently 865,000 New Zealanders over the age of 65. So if just 10% of the over 65 population receive residential care as per your one-sentence policy, New Zealand First will fund residential care for the aged, the cost to New Zealand taxpayers would be $6.2 billion a year. Mr. Peters, I asked you how many prisoners you would hold in your new prisons. You couldn't answer. I asked you how much it would cost. You couldn't answer. I asked you how many people you would care for in your residential care policy. You couldn't answer. I asked you how much it would cost. You couldn't answer. The report was due back in August of 2019. Why would a genuinely concerned,
this is about co-governance now,
competent minister not demanded to have seen the report at that point?
Look, this is wasting everybody's time. This is a waste of
That's a great question.
This is a waste of your viewers' time. This is contempt for the democratic process.
But what about your role in this? Wouldn't a diligent minister who was concerned about co-governance have chased up the report while in cabinet?
So I was concerned about co-governance. I'm opposed to co-governance.
Exactly.
Jack, I know you're desperate, but you're not going to stop this surge in our campaign now with lies and deceit.
Mr. Peters,
I'm sad to see that you're part of it now.
Mr. Peters, I think we all understand the tactic. You come in here, you huff and puff and hurl insults around. I get it. For people at home, it might be entertaining. These are serious times worthy of serious leadership. If you are unable to answer straight questions about your policy, your competence and your integrity, that's on you. Winston Peters, if you are so opposed to co-governance, why did your government oversee the earliest stages of co-governance provisions in Three Waters?
Oh, here we go. This is amazing.
What do those rich listers who've donated to your party want
see,
for their money?
We're not corrupt like you. You're on this program
Well,
trying to get rid of New Zealand first because your masters told you to.
Winston.
I'm asking.
I got
straight
news for you,
questions,
Jack,
Mr.
and your
Peters.
masters. The people out there will decide this election, and the news for your masters is all bad.
If you make it into
What a waste of
government,
my time this to be here.
do you intend to promote tax breaks or government funding that could financially benefit people connected to the racing industry?
No, I've never done that.
When you were last in government, you used the Provincial Growth Fund to fund 3 synthetic racetracks at a cost to taxpayers of more than $10 million. And here's a quote from government officials at the time, quote, "The proposed Riccarton Park synthetic racetrack is located in Christchurch City, which is ineligible for PGF funding. You and Cabinet still signed it off. You gave a tax break to the racing industry worth almost $5 million. So will you oppose any new funding or tax breaks for the racing industry?
This is astonishing. Jack, you're being exposed for the dirt merchant you are. It's so sad.
It's a simple question.
Can't
The way that
put big
politics
plan.
should be run in a democracy
Fucking hell.
is that those who are in powerful positions or wish to be in powerful positions should answer straight
Yeah, I'm gonna
questions.
start with you after-
Your position today is that you oppose vaccine mandates, but in 2021, let's have a look at this. You said on your social media platforms, no
Look,
jab
I've owned up to that. No,
means
sorry.
no dole and no
I didn't
parole.
put that post up, and the people that put the post up, I said at the time, later on, I'm apologising for that, and thereafter I made sure I watched every post every day.
So you expect us to believe that somehow someone close enough to you to be trusted with your social media somehow completely misunderstood your position when it comes to vaccine mandates. Understood it so much that even though you oppose vaccine mandates, they put a post up saying no jab means no.
You know,
no parole.
I've owned up to it. I said it was a mistake. I said I'm sorry, and I've made sure that it never happened again.
Who was it? Who put up the post?
Well, I'm not going to tell you who that person is.
Is that
So-
person in the room with us now, Winston?
So I guess we will watch it. Most people I saw people in the chat saying it's good, so I let it play. Now that's on my Twitter feed right now. If you want to go and I missed out the first 2 minutes because the first 2 minutes was actually what we just showed you, clips from the thing about prison. However, what we didn't show you was how it all finished up, and how it all finished up was the conversation at the very end, which goes for about another 4 minutes. But I'll do that in a sec, because we've got 2 more little bits to play. Is there anything else, Chewy? We're kind of in between everything at the moment. I don't know if even that's a fair representation of the conversation. Like I said, the first time I edited it, it dropped out about 10 minutes, and that's 6. So I dropped about another 12 minutes that's in there as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you hear the Philadelphia lawyer comment?
I don't, but do people know what that means? Do we know what that means?
Well,
The
I've got the explanation queued up in the hope that you had it.
Okay,
So-
I don't know. I don't think I've got it unless it comes up in this last clip. So why don't we just go to the last clip?
In
then we'll see
the
what-
scale of everything so far, it's a small shot, but I'm going to take it because I'm a small, petty man.
Now, just think about this, right? Whatever you do for a job, even if you're at school or university or whatever, if me and you had an argument, right? And I said, okay, well, I'm going to make sure I become the person who's senior to you, right? If me and you had an argument, let's say you work in a dairy, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to make sure I buy this dairy. Or if you're at university, well, okay, if that's how you think, I'm going to make sure I become the head of the department that you're studying at. Would you take that as a threat? I think most people probably would. Winston Peters hasn't been called on this very much today, but without question, he makes a threat to TVNZ because Jack Tame has called him on all his horse shit. That comes towards the end of this clip. Let's just get this last part of the conversation.
I want to finish by asking about
What a
race.
waste of time you are on this interview.
Your
The people want to know what the selection
your
is about, the
candidate-
policies, but you've just turned into a vindictive attack.
Mr. Peters, your candidate Rob Ballantyne said this about Māori.
I knew we'd go there. He didn't say it about Maori. I stopped lying. He said it about the disease, the virus of co-governance.
I'm going to quote Rob Ballantyne.
You're not going to repeat Hipkins' lie to me as he did the other day.
I'm going to quote Rob
I'm not gonna
Ballantyne
be
here,
sucked-
Mr.
being
Peters.
sucked in by it.
I want to. So he said this about Māori. Quote: "Cry if you want to. We don't care. You pushed
He
it
didn't
too
say
far.
that about Maori for the umpteenth time. Stop lying.
We are the party with the cultural mandate and the courage to cut out your disease and bury you permanently." Does his view represent that? Of
No,
New Zealand?
stop lying, Jack. He didn't say that about Maori. He said about the disease and the virus of co-governance, and I've made that speech. in hall after hall, packed to the wall by a stacked Maori in the audience as well, all agreeing with me.
That might make sense, but
Really?
And we're not going to have amateur hour with you telling me what Maori think.
that might make sense, Mr. Peters, that explanation, but for one word. The word is you. I will quote him directly. I've been back and watched the tape. He said,
I've watched that
we
tape
will
as well.
bury you
Bury you.
permanently. Not bury it, not bury co-governance, not bury the concept, bury you. He was also asked about his comments by staff.
Just notice in this point, Winston's not pushing back. You notice that? Like, he's not pushing back. I suspect he's going, fuck, what do we do here? Like, he has been jumping. But when Jack says this, the word you, and then goes on to talk about stuff, Winston's not pushing back. I wonder what's going through his mind right now.
And Mr. Ballantyne himself added context. He said this: I was not talking about mainstream Māori. I was talking about the disingenuous Māori elite. It's the likes of Willie Jackson. Rob Ballantyne, when given an opportunity to add context to that statement, agreed that it was about people, not about a concept. That quote was about human beings.
I have spoken to Mr. Ballantyne. He has been going off my speeches, and I've always connected the cancer of the co-governance, which is destructing our democracy, where one vote is no longer the same, connected it to democracy itself, and I've then connected to the people who are out there. He's elite, self-appointed, like Te Pāti Māori, which is probably going to go down this campaign and won't be in Parliament. Here's Te Pāti Māori making all these demands, right? They say that
God, I'd love that to be
70%
reversed.
of the population, yet they're only polling about 1.5, which means that a mass majority of Māori do not want them.
I'm going to read that
And
quote
you
once
out
more.
there,
Mr. Peters,
you're
this
out
is the
there,
quote of your candidate.
A
We are the
woke
party with a cultural mandate
traveller telling me a Maori
and the courage.
and a Maori with a proud.
Notice how he just identified himself as a Māori? Have you ever, I'm not, and like, obviously he is, but have you ever heard Winston Peters feel the need to play that identity politics? I mean, he is the one who always talks against identity politics, yet in a moment where he's trying to gain a footing back against Jack Tame, he's basically saying, how dare you tell a Māori what a Māori is saying? And I've never heard that before from Mr. Peters. It's a really interesting dynamic. When's that?
The minor party debate.
Right.
When it was his main weapon against Te Pāti Māori and Greens, going, well, I'm a Māori and you don't speak for me, basically.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Let's get the last 90 seconds of this.
Background, what I should be thinking. This is extraordinary.
To cut out your
How
disease
arrogant can you be?
and bury you.
How arrogant can you be? It's like yesterday's interview as well. I got a white person telling a Maori, been here thousands of years, started the Ngāti Land Retention Committee, one of the biggest land cases ever.
Does your candidate
what Maori
know,
should think?
Does Rob Ballantyne know that it was your decision to put Labour in power that made the Māori elite he wants to bury Willie Jackson, the Minister of Māori Development? Is he aware that it was your decision?
Oh, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. My colleagues, for a start, all agreed, having had a talk with Bill English at the very opening of the negotiations, that we were in trouble going with National because there was going to be a spill on. They were out to roll Bill English, and we'd seen it all before. Everybody in my caucus at the time unanimously thought, well, we're in trouble, we've got to do this. And here you are now blaming me for Willie Jackson being the Minister of Māori Affairs.
Well, you chose Labour.
But he never had
Jacinda
that in his manifesto.
Right.
Excuse me. And that was never part of our coalition agreement at all.
Excuse me. Nothing's happening.
It's what was happening covertly, hidden away from me. And Willie Jackson, bless his cotton socks, has said that. But no, Jack Tame and TVNZ, now not believe Willie, who's got no reason to lie, you prefer to go ahead with the lie. And you're
Mr.
doing it
Peters,
again
I
today.
have one last question for you.
People are going to say to me, Winston, why did you bother to come here today? And I'm going to say, well, I stopped.
Mr. Peters,
because I think democracy's about hearing both sides of the story, not hearing arrogant.
And he knows.
jumped-up,
He was there when they
overpaid people
invented
think
it.
they know more about this country.
Mr. Peters, you have
Thank you,
railed
Jack.
against co-governance.
Thank you, Jack. You just made a hopeless case here. And it's a good case
you've railed
for us
against co-governance.
for us to make sure we get the broadcasting
Fucking hell.
portfolio after this election.
Is that a threat, Mr. Peters?
No, it's not a threat. It's a promise that
What
you're
the
going to have
fuck?
an operation that's much more improved than what it is now. It's just an idea.
Thank you for your time.
What a
Good luck in
prick.
the campaign.
Yeah, well, I believe that, Jack, like I believe half the other bull dust you just said.
New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters.
It's the laugh at the end, isn't it? So there you go. So that was the last kind of 60 seconds. That was the whole thing. And there's one more clip I'm going to show you. just to round this all up, because part of the setup is that, Winston's becoming more and more Trumpian. This was from today's news. The whole thing about he's releasing his numbers. They was releasing the budget and he didn't do it. So TVNZ bailed him up and they said, you told us you were going to release them yesterday. You still haven't released them today. What's going on?
Just on the release of the New Zealand First Manifesto.
Look, I've had all set to go, and these guys said, look, wait till the OCR out. That'll be the last thing that you need. And I thought, no, I can't wait. But
blaming other people.
Honestly, I think we have to, because there's such a movable feast in terms of people's calculations of affordability and cost. And it's a circus going on. I want to get it right.
So it's a change of your position from yesterday on Q&A when you did say it would be released yesterday, Sunday.
Sorry, but look, there it is there, but I'm not letting it go until I've got the final figures out. There it is, all pages, the whole lot.
Why did you yesterday, why
You'd
did
be
you...
here for another 5 hours.
Yesterday, why did you say it would be released yesterday?
Because that's what they said to me, and then the last moment, the guy, somebody said to me, who really
Somebody?
does know, he said, I've
Far
got this
out.
because I don't know what they're going to do. And if you do get this wrong, it'll look pretty silly by the leaders' debate on Thursday night.
People are voting already. Early voting has started.
Yeah, I
Is it
know.
a bit late to get the manifesto out?
Well, now, you see, I've had all these meetings for 2 years, and if you'd been at my meetings, tell the public what I've been speaking about on all these subjects, they wouldn't have to get that information now. But you've turned up in the closing 11th hour because the surge is on.
I'm just asking if the manifesto should be out before early voting starts.
Of course it should be, but the OCR should be out as well. I don't know why they picked that date for the OCR to be there so discontented with the special votes.
So give us an idea.
Could you just clarify why the manifesto wasn't released yesterday? What was the issue?
I was told, look, the
I was
OCR is
told
coming out. And you
somebody
need to
else.
wait and get a final readout because it could be some change. That change could be substantial. If there's a drag out of
That's utter horseshit. The OCR is going to do nothing. But, this whole thing, blaming other people, not me, not about me, some guy, someone else. When Trump does that thing and he puts the voice on and he goes, oh, and he said, sir, every time Trump says sir, when someone's talking to him, it's horseshit. That's his tell. Oh, someone said to me, sir, he said, sir. It's the same thing. Somebody else, this person, that person, somebody else. You should have been here. You weren't, your fault. It's just... he's gone from, and I'll say it again, I'll mea culpa a little bit. I've been involved in several interviews with Winnie, and he's always fun, and I've said he's always fun to interview, but it's just gone.
This
gone
seems
to a
like
new
something
level.
different, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does. It does.
It's like he's always like I mentioned that his bullshit that was going on when I was 16, 17, 18, somewhere around there, prompted me to write my first letter to the Timaru Herald as actually one letter of the week or something. Yeah, exactly. And it was for race baiting bullshit against Asians and that sort of thing. And he's always been this combative, divisive guy. And every time I've spoken to someone that has had an opinion about New Zealand First, or maybe they've even voted for New Zealand First, as it's always been, well, he keeps things interesting and he likes to rattle people's cages and stuff like that. This is something different.
Yeah.
This is something different, and he's talking to a different crowd as well. Yeah. I think his pivot to talking to, the conspiracy crowd and that sort of thing, he's coming off mushy. He is coming off past his best. And when he doesn't have an angle, he'll go on the attack. And there isn't an answer there. And I think for people to go, oh, Winston's back, New Zealand First is back, these interactions should raise all sorts of red flags. It's like he's chucking out flares and smoke grenades of just bullshit to distract away from it. He shouldn't be getting this much attention. Like he's within the margin of error of getting in or not.
It's also free publicity. It's actually, again, talking about Trump, ironically, it's why one of the reasons Trump bet Clinton. I wasn't a fan of Clinton. She wasn't my pick. But one of the reasons is they have numbers on it. He got like $3 billion worth of free publicity or something. That's what Winston's getting at the moment. That interview, which I honestly think is one of the most repulsive interviews I've ever seen or heard, will get him votes. Because there'll be lots of people going, yeah, stick it to the man. I've seen someone on Twitter today recutting Jack Tame's Twitter icon and giving him a new title, Philadelphian lawyer. So there is a sector of society that will actually help Winston get his vote from. And it's kind of also speaks to what do you do in the media when you give, I mean, you have to speak to Winston. TVNZ has to because he's possibly going to be there. Maybe not. But it's, it's just ugly. It's ugly. It's revolting.
So you mentioned Philadelphia lawyer.
Yep.
And this is one that jumped out at me because it's a very specific term and it's a very old-timey term as well, which made me laugh. So I thought, well, he's using it as a derogatory term to old Jack Tame, right?
Yep.
Do you know? Have you come across it before? Do you know what it means?
I hadn't, but I have looked it up since I heard it. Yep.
A Philadelphia lawyer is a term used to describe a lawyer who knows the most detailed and minute points of law and is an exceptionally competent lawyer. And its first usage dates back to 1788, I assume attributed to Winston Peters. So yeah, he's trying to pull off an insult, and an old fucking porridge brain has cocked that up. You know, there's some people in the chat going, "Oh, you know, he's a top operator." He's not. He has porridge as a main meal. I guarantee it. This is evening meal and off the nap. Like he's past his best.
Yeah.
You look on the balance sheet of what he has achieved for New Zealand, and there's the wine box and there's the gold card, and that's it. He's been there for decades on the public tat.
Unless you're in a specific group like the racing industry, they will say to him.
Now that's my whole takeaway from this, right? That stunned me. The fact that he absolutely wanted to be in charge of the racing industry, and I thought, of course he was. It's horse racing. He'd be there with his newspaper under his arm and his cigar. But to hear that he's been literally getting kickbacks to New Zealand First from people that have interest in the racing industry, to hear that funds were misappropriated out of the Regional Development Fund, which could have been a good idea. Like, it could have been. And to hear it's been frittered away on fucking race courses in Christchurch.
Yep.
That made me furious. There was the development here in Dunedin to reinvigorate our waterfront. That was supposed to come out of the Regional Development Fund, and that didn't happen. And to hear that it's gone to a race course, a synthetic race course, of all fucking things, for the racing industry. Do you know why the racing industry needs propped up? Because it's a dying industry. That is corruption. To hear him threaten a TVNZ interviewer.
Well, all of TVNZ, really.
All of TVNZ, but definitely directed to Jack Tame.
Yeah.
That is standover tactics, and it's corruption. He's talking to the crowd that doesn't trust the media, and he wants to control the media. That is corruption.